What's up, guys? Tyler Nowotny back here again for another Ask Me Anything. Once again, we're going to use Reddit for this. This has been a really popular segment for us. We're going to try to do these every Friday. I think this is 3 weeks in a row now. There's always some interesting topics on here, always some interesting questions, and I think there's definitely a lot of value being provided. So I'm going to start off. We're just going to jump right into it, but before we get into it, if you have any questions you'd like to have answered, don't hesitate to go ahead and ask those in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Better late than never. I'm a noob with my 401k and wondering if I can retire comfortably. This person is 36 years old. What I will say is if you are 35, if you are 36, if you are 40, you've got a long time to go until retirement. It is not too late. You've got plenty of time. You can start at 35, and then by the time you're 60, you could still have $1 million or more in your retirement. So before I even get into this, I'm sure there's many of you in the same boat. No, it's not too late. Not even close to being too late. 401k, currently 22k. My employer has a special 401k and I hired their experts to manage my 401k at 0.07%, but it's BlackRock 2070 index fund. I'd like to retire somewhere in 2050. Yeah, so that's 24 years down the road. Do I keep it as is since I started late? You have to keep it in your, if you're still working for the employer, you cannot move it out of the 401k. You're going to have to keep it. That would be referred to as an in-service withdrawal. And generally speaking, you can't do an in-service withdrawal unless you're 59 and a half or older. Again, in-service withdrawal means you currently work for the employer. The only withdrawals you can do are usually emergency withdrawals, and that's to take money out, and you're still going to pay a penalty on that. Or hardship withdrawal. You're still going to pay a 10% penalty on that. So no, you can't roll it out. Once you leave the employer, then you'll be able to go ahead and make that move. Savings 13K, no debt. Savings about 2K a month. So this guy's wondering if he can retire comfortably. He's actually in a very good situation. He's saving $2,000 a month. He's got no debt. He's 36 years old. He's got 24 years to build up wealth. Just even knowing those things, yes, absolutely. If he does the right things, without a shadow of a doubt. Compound interest is a miracle. When you have 24 years of compounding interest and you're continually contributing like this person is, absolutely, you're going to be able to make it. That's not the craziest amount I've heard. It's not even close to it. Work on getting that paid off over the next 5 years, and then you got 20 years to just go as hard as you can saving for retirement. Again, you can do it. You're younger than 40 years old. You got plenty of time. You absolutely can do it. And you see here, this is the problem with personal loans, car loans, credit card, is the interest is insane. So it's not even the dollar amount that you're carrying as a balance that is the problem. The problem is the interest is 10, 15, 20%. You're paying a huge amount every month. That's why, if possible, avoid credit cards, avoid these extensive car loans especially. All right, this one looks interesting. Laid off after 25 years, what to do with 401k. Looking for advice on what to do with the funds in my 401k. Recently laid off for the first time in my adult life. I called a company where my funds are and they said there are a few options, but they recommend moving the funds into an IRA of my choice. Their fees are about 1%, it's pretty much standard. I have about 225k in there. I'm 48 and plan to work until 65 at least. I plan to be working again soon, but if I understood them correctly, it makes more sense to have these funds in an IRA that I have more control over, rather than putting them into a 401k account offered by my next job, which may have rules I don't like. Are they giving it to me straight? Any advice? This person doesn't list who their employer is. I don't know where the plans are, so I'm going to have to speak generally. Yes, that makes sense. Because when you have an employer plan, you have to go by that employer's rules, even if you do not work for that employer anymore. They can move the account to another provider. You could be at Fidelity, they can move it to Prudential. Guess what? Now you have to go and create a Prudential account and follow that money just because your employer decided to move the account. Again, even if you're not still working there, if you kept your money there, they can do that. If you roll it into a new plan, you roll it into your new 401k, they can have rules about in-service withdrawals, about whether you can take the money out. You don't really want to lose that flexibility. So an IRA is likely going to be the optimal choice, especially in this scenario. Yeah, and here's something that people don't understand either. So I used to work on the plan administration side of employer plans. I used to help manage the Coca-Cola plan. I know how these employer plans work. A lot of people think their 401k plans have no fees. And then they say, oh, 1% in an IRA versus my 401k, which is free. Your 401k is not free. There is a program fee which is hidden unless you actually look up the plan documents, which is anywhere usually from 0.5 to 1.5% of just the program fee. Then you can only have mutual funds in the 401k. Those mutual funds have their own expense ratios, which is the fees for them. So oftentimes you can actually reduce your fees by rolling from an employer plan, 401k plan to an IRA. But because the program fee is hidden, it's not on your statement or anything, you're going to have to go into the plan documents to look at it. People don't see it, so they think, oh, I'm not paying any fees. I just pay 0.1% on whatever these funds are. Not true. All right? Every single employer plan has a program fee of some sort. That's just the facts. This response is going to drive me crazy. Backdoor Roth conversions. So first of all, you do a backdoor Roth as new funds you initially contributed. There is no such thing as a backdoor Roth contribution inside of a 401k. 401ks do not have income limits as to who can contribute. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. You can, if you want to contribute to Roth, you can contribute directly to Roth. You can convert from a traditional to a Roth there, but conversions do not affect contribution limit, so that wouldn't be a backdoor. That's just a Roth conversion. I'm 20, have a debt of 7K plus and a credit score of 350. You're only 20 years old. You're so young. 7K is nothing. Just pay it off. You could have it paid off by the time you're 23, 24 years old. But probably you said you have 5 different credit cards and a car loan. Well, chop up all those credit cards except for one and don't spend more than you have to. If possible, there are get-on assistance programs. I tell people this all the time. There's nothing to be ashamed about. If you're not making the money and you need help, go on SNAP. Go on Medicaid. Just do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I've seen people who SNAP has actually saved them, has really made their situation a million times better because they didn't realize that they'd be able to get $800 a month in food stamps, which you can use basically at any grocery store. Which now, instead of spending $600 a month on food, they're not spending that. They're getting help. That $800 they're now getting from the government. And so that other $600 they could position somewhere, they've essentially gained a benefit of $1,400 extra, if that makes sense. So if you're in a situation where you're really struggling to get by, there's no shame in going on SNAP, going on Medicaid, allowing the government to help with some of your bills. A family member is generously gifting me $50,000 over the next 2 years. Is a CD the best place for it if I want to use the money for a down payment? It depends on if you're going to make a down payment in the next 2 years. You can't really take a risk of losing that money because the whole point of it is you want it to be there for the down payment. That you're getting now is still going to cover you then. Probably it's going to make sense to do a CD or of some sort, 1 or 2 year CD, so you have that for fixed income, and that money is also growing a little bit in case the price of housing goes up a little bit. Obviously can't speak to the specifics here, but from a general standpoint, you're not going to want to do anything crazy. You're not going to want to invest that in the market. It's probably the best way to go. My 401k has a year-to-date return of 1.63%. Is this considered normal? Yes, because the S&P 500 overall is down. S&P 500 is down 1% year-to-date. So a lot of people think, I see these things on the internet that, oh, you can put your money in the S&P and you'll get 10% every year. That's not how it works. There is going to be down years. It wouldn't be an investment if there weren't down years. There's going to be up years, there's going to be down years. You have to accept that. You have to understand that, okay, if the market's down 10%, I'm down 10, all right, I don't love it, but it is what it is. What you, however, have to look for is if the market is down 5 and you're down 15, that's where that can become a problem because it's, all right, why am I underperforming the market so much? Do I have an allocation that is more aggressive than the market? And then on the flip side, if I'm up 5 and the market's up 15, why is the market outperforming me so much? Is the market even a good benchmark anymore? Am I more conservative because the market could be doing 15, I could be doing 5, but if I have half my allocation in CDs, yeah, I wouldn't expect to keep up with the market. So it's really all about looking at your portfolio, looking at the market, and understanding if those really are apples to apples comparisons. But for this year, yeah, you're up for the year, you're having a good year. Because most people are down, the market's down slightly year to date. Here's an interesting one. Is a 12-month CD at 7% APY a no-brainer? I don't know if there's any CDs that are paying 7% right now. I'm a U.S. citizen living and earning income in Vietnam. The interest rate there is currently super attractive, around 7%. All right, so it looks like this is a Vietnamese CD. Now, the question I would have, is it paying in dollars or is it paying in Vietnamese dong? I pretty much know the answer. It's paying in Vietnamese dong. It's paying 7%, but what is their currency looking? Because if their currency is devaluing at 10% and they're paying you 7%, who cares? And so this is really a question on the state of that country you're living in. So the question is, should I do a CD paying 7% in Vietnamese dong? I don't know the answer to that. That's something you have to figure out yourself. If it were me, I would personally stick to probably U.S. investments. That's probably what you're familiar with. You're from the U.S. Different countries, there's different levels of stability. I know Vietnam is a pretty nice country, so that's not a shot at them, but the question is really about the stability of their currency now. And the fact that they have much higher interest rates indicates that the currency probably isn't as stable. Yeah, see here, the top commenter here, exactly the point. While it is a guaranteed return in Vietnamese dong, if the US dollar Vietnamese dong exchange rate changes, it could be less USD than when you are done than when you start. Yeah, because that's the risk that comes in here is, like we said, exchange rate risk. Because if the US dollar all of a sudden surges in strength, now all of a sudden this person could have lost money having it in that, because like I said before, they're betting on the strength or weakness of Vietnam as a whole and Vietnamese currency. Withdrawing from IRA to buy a house. If I was to withdraw my money from my IRA to buy a house, I am exempt from the penalty, correct? I would just have to pay taxes on it next year. How would I show that I used it to buy a house to avoid the early withdrawal penalty? I'm a 27-year-old male, have $15,000 in checking, 30 in HYSA, 85K in other retirement accounts. I can't afford to do this without it pulling from my IRA. However, this IRA is from an old job that used to be a 401k. If you can afford to do it without pulling from the IRA, then you're stupid if you pull from the IRA, because yes, there is a first-time home buyer exception for the penalty. Now, there are limits to how much you can pull, but it's also all going to count as income. So if you pull that all, well, guess what? That's all going to get added to your income and you're going to be in a higher tax bracket. If you can afford to do it otherwise, no, don't pull it. It's stupid. Why would you unnecessarily increase the amount of taxes you're going to pay if you don't have to? Yeah, like this person says here, it's a very small amount that's actually exempt. It's only up to $10,000 that is exempt. Everything above that, you're paying 10% penalty on. Absolutely not. Honestly, it's from an old employer. If you really had to, you could take a loan of up to $50,000 or half the account and then just pay that back over time, and then you're paying interest to yourself. But absolutely no. Absolutely not. Don't do this. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. Wanted to just come on here and do these AMAs. There's always a lot of interesting topics on here that interest a lot of you guys. If you have questions, make sure to comment down below. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you another day. Have a great one.